So describe like a typical shift for an ombudsman. What, do you mostly work with the staff or do you work with the residents or both? And like, what do your duties involve exactly?
Okay, it's both. So let's see, I'll just pretend like you're walking with me or rolling with me there. So usually I get there and there's a nice little porch at my facility and there are rocking chairs. And so there are a lot of residents that are sitting out there, especially lately because the weather's cooled down. And so I end up spending probably about 15 minutes talking with the residents on the porch before I even make it in the door. And it's so important to develop a relationship and a rapport with people. You want them to understand that you're on their side and that you believe in them, you trust them. Because what often happens is people put in this position don't have a lot of credibility in society. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying not to use a philosophical term. I'm trying to say, your credibility as a person is diminished because we have so many ableist, ageist assumptions in our society about people, that people automatically assume that they have significant memory problems or cognitive issues and some people do. So a lot of them just aren't believed.
Right. Right.
So it's so important to let them know that, I believe you, you can trust me and I'm really going to work with you and help you.
Right. So you just kind of get to know the folks there and like you start on the porch.
Right.
Go in and then and like, what do you do when do you go to different, like, do you knock on individual room doors and just say, hey, can I visit with you for a few minutes? And
right. That's exactly what I do. So when I first, go in, I sign in because most nursing facilities want you to do that. And you always have to wear your ombudsman badge, but it's to the point where, well, most of them know me, but let me tell you, in most nursing homes, there's such a high turnover rate that in less than a year, at the place at which I'm assigned, I've seen 5 administrators and just countless staff. It's a revolving door. So, not everyone knows, who I am.
Yeah, you don't have a relationship as much with the staff. I'm sure it's more with the residents just because they're there all the time, but the staff kind of goes in and out. So
I try to build a relationship with the staff because that's really important. I want them to know that I'm not their enemy. I'm not trying to get them fired. I want to work with them. And that's really important because, and it's hard. It's hard too, because unfortunately, no matter how nice I am, they view me as the enemy, I think.
Well, yeah. Well, it's a little intimidating, I'm sure, in a little way. You're just because you're an outsider coming in.
Right. And they feel like I'm scrutinizing their work, and when they're not doing their work, I am.
Right. And a lot of times, like, I imagine in a similar sense to like a school, I used to be a teacher. It's like a lot of times, you're put in a situation as a teacher where you don't have a lot of resources. Maybe your principal hasn't done a very good job setting up your schedule. So like, you maybe have too many kids in your class and, you're overrun with a lot of issues and all these factors come into play. And you're kind of like set up for failure sometimes.
Well, that's
it's very hard because then someone comes in and they observe and they're saying, well, you're failing. And you're like, you can't explain that you were set up like that. It just looks like you just do a really bad job.
Right. And unfortunately, in so many facilities, that's what we're seeing. For instance, in Texas, with regard to certified nursing assistants, CNAs, and those aren't nurses, those are, the people who may give people baths and get them water and change their adult briefs or, wheel them about.
Right.
These are people that they have no formal education, like with, regard to nursing or social work. And so Texas has no resident to CNA ratios, so they'll say they're not understaffed because legally, they're not, but they are. And so what I'm seeing is you see poor women that are doing these jobs, really, really hard jobs. And it's mostly women. You have some, CNAs that are men, but it's mostly women. And they're making maybe, $9 or $10 an hour. And people call in, or there are other CNAs who maybe aren't doing their job. So perhaps a good one is having to take on the load of one who's not doing what they ought to be doing. So it's exhausting, and they're the ones that seem to the culpability is, it oftentimes feels like it's just all laid upon their shoulders. And like you said, so often as the case is they're really set up for failure. I'm seeing in some places there's just inadequate training and inadequate staffing. So
right. So it's hard, in that situation, because they may not understand that you understand that, and that you're just going in and watching them, like screw it, like, just, rush through things, or, what I mean? Like, they don't understand that you kind of get that part of it. Like, you understand that part of the job, but they don't know that. And so that's got to be very hard, because it kind of does put you in a cop like role,
right.
That's not really the job. So
and so when there are good CNAs, I really go out of my way to say, thank you so much, you're great. Everyone's so glad to have you here. The residents adore you. I do that.
I bet they really appreciate that. I do.
Yeah.
It's a thankless job, I believe, in a lot of respects. So
it is. And if you think about it, I mean, I know, I'm not sure in Texas, but in certain states, you can make at least $10 an hour at Walmart or a fast food restaurant. So, and obviously that would probably be much easier than this work.
Right. And, I think that a lot of times people assume that a nursing facility or a nursing home, isn't, there's more individual attention because everybody's all in one place. And I think that it's a huge misunderstanding, versus like living in your own home and having an attendant, a CNA, come to your house to help you,
right?
Or a PCA or a CNA or whoever, you get a lot more individualized attention. So you get a lot more bang for your buck.
Right. That's exactly
in a nursing home.
That's exactly right. Now, I think in quality facilities, there's probably more individualized attention, but no, it's in a lot of states, it's very bad. I read on one nursing facility, like residents were getting essentially an hour per day. It was something so ridiculous,
Right. And like right now, in my house, I have 7 hours a day roughly for attendant care. So I mean, that makes a huge difference. That allows me to get things I need done and met. And so it would be probably 3 times the cost to house me in a nursing home, and I would only get 1 hour of probably direct attention.
Right. So that's exactly right. And it's approximately $54,000 annually to house someone in a Texas private nursing home, and that's with Medicare or Medicaid. Now, I think for Texas state institutions, which they're closing, that's in the $100,000.
Right.
Annually. So yeah, I mean, it would be much cheaper to allow people to stay in their own homes. And
it was like $84,000 for a private room. And on a national level, like average wise, it's about $84,000.
Right. That's right. Texas is a little lower for some reason. It may have something to do with not expanding Medicaid. They have lower reimbursement rates here than they do in other states.
They do. Yeah. And my care at home, I think for 50 hours a week, I believe it works out to about in the 30s, low 30s.
Okay, see, now that's really interesting. So, you have residents in some facilities that may be just getting a couple of hours of care. And taxpayers are paying on
Mhm.
average, like you said, anywhere from $54,000 to $80,000 for what amounts to, not all, but in quite a few situations, substandard care, where you're setting up people for failure and neglect and abuse.
Right, right. So, and that's why, like I said, I think this interview is really important. I think your work is really important. It's good that people know that, like that this exists. So people just don't think about it. So,
No, they don't think about it. And, I'm glad you brought that up, because so often I'm sitting with residents holding their hands and they're crying. And here's something I hear so often from some of them: doesn't anyone care about us? They've just forgotten about us in here,
mhm,
And it's, as a social worker, you have to remain as objective as possible. But I'm a human being, and there was one time where this woman was saying that, and I started crying. I mean, it just broke my heart,
mhm,
and I was really embarrassed, for letting her see me cry. But it seemed to really touch her, and she said, sometimes it seems like, you're one of the only people that care about us. And that really made me so angry for these people.
yeah, no, and that's the thing. I think people do care. I just don't know if they know how to care. And so maybe this interview will inspire someone to go out and do what you're doing and show more people in more homes that they haven't been forgotten. You
Right,
know,
and that's part of the problem with, and I consider this segregation. It's segregation of older and disabled people, is that we're out of sight and we're out of mind.
mhm,
And for some reason, people are under the misconception that people are being taken care of
mhm,
at some of these places when they're really not.
right,
Um,
right. Um, so favorite parts of the work, and what are some of the challenges that you're facing?
well,
We
and
talked a little bit about that,
I and
but
I'm going to say my residents, obviously they're their own people, but some of them have become family to me, and I love them, and they're intelligent and they're funny and they're fascinating. And for the most part, most people are older, but I have maybe two or three right now, younger residents. And there's one woman. She's from France, and she lived in France during the Nazi occupation. And so I love hearing her stories and her French accent. I mean, it's just so fascinating, um, to be around someone like that, my God, she's experienced this. I mean, I
mhm,
can't even begin to imagine that.
right.
And she came here as a war bride, and yeah.
Um, wow. And you said there are some younger folks in the, like, how young would you say that you've seen?
Let's see. So I've seen some people in their early 30s, maybe a little younger than that.
And they just have disabilities. Is that
Mhm.
why they're there?
Yes, yeah, I do have some people who may have muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, spinal injuries, that type of thing.
Gotcha.
And um, I find that particularly heartbreaking, because uh, they're they're not in their own peer group. Some of them, they don't really have anything in common with someone that might be in their 80s.
Hmm.
They're just so separated, and there's not enough stimulation. And, I mean, they're young people. They should be out, if they want, they should be out dating, or going out, or maybe being in school, or doing fun things that other people are doing, or engaging in, activities, that are enriching, or whatnot. So,
Hmm.
um,
Well, I
it's,
imagine that and also I imagine it's hard as far as it would be for me. I know as a person in my 40s who is physically disabled, probably not more so than the people that are in the facility. And I would probably have a lot of survivor's guilt, you know, as a person that, or, you know, sort of survival guilt.
Yes,
in this,
definitely.
you know, I'm not in the past tense a survivor, I'm surviving, but, you know, but I'm out and able to do all these things. I have so much privilege. I have a job and I'm driving and I'm, you know, and so, and then to go in and see somebody that is literally my equal as far as, you know, need.
Right.
And yet they're not able to do what I'm doing. So they've got to feel a little, that's got to feel heavier.
It is. It's very difficult, you know, being a person with a disability. And like you said, I have friends who are living out in their community and working and going to school and engaging in activism, and whose impairments are, you know, on par with people I'm seeing in the facility.
Right.
And it's just like, why is this happening? There's no reason for this. And
Right.
most of it, they don't want to be there, you know.
Right. And they just don't know exactly what to do, and they don't know exactly how to advocate. And so, you know, do you, if they don't want to be there, what, like, and I didn't ask them, and we don't have to talk about this if you know.
No, it's fine.
But like, if they don't want to be there, if they're in a nursing home and they say, like, or anyone, any of the residents, if they say, look, I really want to go home, like, how do you wrestle with that? Like, what can you do in your?
Well, so there have been times where I've contacted the Houston Center for Independent Living to reach out to someone and help them. I let them know, you know, there are resources in the community that are available. And if you'd like to live on your own, you know, I can connect you to these people and they can come in and talk to you and you can explore some of your options with them. And
do you ever bring up my Olmstead rights at all? I mean, do they know what that is?
Yes, I do. I do bring up Olmstead.
That's great. Yeah, and do you feel like they are motivated from those conversations, or do you feel like they take the initiative and try to take steps, or?
I've had some who definitely do, and then I see other young people who don't have a disability consciousness, who have been, you know, sort of treated in a patronizing manner their whole entire lives. They're so disempowered. Their family members are oppressive. And so even though, you know, they're very intelligent people, emotionally, they've been, what's a nice word to,
Oppressed.
They have a learned helplessness.
Yeah.
And they're too afraid to do anything.
Right. And that's difficult.
Yeah, and that's, you know, first of all, let me say the Ombudsman program, the most important thing is about empowering residents to advocate on their own behalf. I mean, I feel like that's my important role, and everything is about consent. I mean, the whole reason I'm doing this is because I want people to have self-sovereignty. I want them to lead self-directed lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, this is ultimately up to them and what they want to do and what they're comfortable with, you know.
Right. And sometimes, I mean, I imagine that if you've been kind of given a kind of a framework of thinking your entire life where you've been kind of boxed in, it's very hard to see outside that box and see a possible, you know.
Definitely.
And it's hard.
And here's the thing is I don't want to blame these people and make it sound like they're having some type of character flaw, because it's definitely not that. It really has to do with oppression and internalizing that oppression and having an infiltrated consciousness that's just so permeated with ableism, you know, and not knowing other people with disabilities and seeing what they're capable of doing. I mean, it's not like you can, and how often do we see people with disabilities in professional positions or in movies or on commercials or on television shows, leading self-directed lives and being empowered without this pitying narrative.
Right.
There's a lack of role models,
Right. Right. No, I agree with you. And it's hard because there's not a lot of resources out there. So it's not exactly super easy once you're out, like, to find housing, to find attendant care.
That's right. That's a good point. And we've seen in the last, for depending on the state, a lot of states. Now, again, these are my own personal political views. Ombudsmen are coming all political stripes and whatnot. But personally, as a disabled person, I am against austerity economics. And I think, cuts to social programs are extraordinarily harmful to people with disabilities. I mean, there's a lack of affordable, accessible housing. They're cutting back on personal care attendant hours. They're cutting back on independent living programs and whatnot. So essentially, we have this wonderful law. The ADA is beautiful, and we have the Supreme Court Olmstead decision of 1999, and what now? The ADA is 27 years old. And then we have all of these wonderful laws from Medicare and Medicaid outlining the rights of people with disabilities within nursing facilities. But none of this matters if the states aren't enforcing it and the states aren't funding these programs. Then essentially people, our options are circumscribed, and you end up being a prisoner in one of these places,
Right. No, and it's a talk and walk thing, talk the talk, but you gotta walk the walk. Like you can have that disconnect. You can say that these laws exist and Olmstead exists, and Olmstead isn't a law, but it's a huge decision that said that people who are institutionalized and want to be in the community, that they have the right to be in that community, and the state needs to support that. But if the money's not there, if the money's not directed in an appropriate way, if block grants take over and states are given more freedom as to who's going to receive what, and there's not as much
block grants are a complete nightmare for people with disabilities. This is a terrible.
It puts us against each other to fight for a pool of money that's fixed, and there's no rhyme or reason to who's going to get what. And so, what are you going to say? We're going to use some of this money for attendant care, for instance, but then the same money could go to Meals on Wheels and feed people that are starving and meals. And so then all of a sudden the Meals on Wheels and the attendant care people are fighting with each other. And that's not how the world should work. I realize that, there's, that whole idea that, well, we're not, we can't fix everybody and everybody, but the grant, at least when you had more money going into a program like Medicaid, where there's laws involved in regulation, there's at least more evidence-based reasons to put funds in one direction versus another direction.
And that's a good point. I'm not seeing right now the way the policies are being implemented, it's not evidence-based. Unfortunately, it's informed by biases and prejudice and just, political demagoguery and
who's suffering from what, a politician's mother maybe, in a position where so then all of a sudden money is directed towards that population, or, it's very haphazard. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just whoever gets to the politician first, or however that works. And that's
and there's sort of a revolving door in politics right now, where you see people who were in a particular industry, they're now, are representatives. But they're still being informed by that industry. Their campaign contributions may be coming from a particular industry, like, let's just say, for instance, large nursing home corporations are funding their campaigns and informing policies.
Right. Well, and there's a nursing home lobby, a nursing facility, a lobby of, just like the prescription drug lobby, and
Right.
they have a lot more money to devote towards to get politicians to swing votes in their direction, and versus like a disability lobby. I mean, there's just people with disabilities tend to not have tons of millions of dollars.
Right.
And so we don't have the influence ability that
No, we're definitely outnumbered.
right,
Yeah.
we're facing, but yeah, if you did all the numbers and you sat down, you would see that, that not putting money towards nursing facilities and, high cost prescription, I mean, all this stuff makes so much more sense, but it doesn't matter. It's like,
right.
so it's hopeless. So
right.
we could go on all day about this.
Yeah.
Oh God, I wish I could.
Right.
But I think that's really, that's why focusing on what we can do.
Right.
We can't put millions of dollars in a lobby. We can't, like, we're two little people right here.
Right.
That much. But what we can do,
I don't want people to feel disempowered about this, because look what ADAPT and people with disabilities were able to accomplish with regard to, the recent healthcare bills passed. I mean, everybody should thank disabled people, because, we were getting arrested, getting dragged out. I mean, I know I was on the phone constantly calling people. All of us were, we were on the ball. We did it. We stopped.
Yeah, we did. We have a lot, and and it was a huge, massive effort on our community's part, and we made change. And yeah, and even though we didn't have the money behind it, we did it. And that's the thing. I feel like there are these little intricate, small little things that we can do, and one of these is becoming an ombudsman.